Okay. Do you know the temperature of the water that this victim had been found in?
Nope. No, sir.
Okay. Were the hands in what are called bags at the time you saw the victim in the hospital?
No, sir.
Did you notice anything unusual about the hands? That is, whether there was any wrinkling on the fingers or pruning?
No, sir.
And you're familiar with wrinkling and pruning, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is wrinkling and pruning?
Well, I just remember from being a child standing in the tub too long.
You get in the tub too long and your fingers wrinkle. In this particular case, you didn't see that, did you?
I mean, no, sir, I didn't.
Thank you, that's all.
Redirect.
Is it within your purview as a doctor to assess how long somebody's been in the water based on observations of the body?
No, ma'am.
Are you able to tell this jury how long this patient was in the water?
Absolutely not.
Are you trained to observe the pruning on the fingers and toes to make a determination as to how long the person was submerged?
No, ma'am.
Nothing further.
Any juror have a question of this witness? Right, you can step in. Do we need to keep them any further?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
You're excused. Thank you for being here. Call your next witness.
Deputy Kellerman.
You face the clerk and be sworn, please.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat. Slide at the microphone, please.
Sir, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
I'm Detective John Kellerman with the Leon County Sheriff's Office Crime Scene Unit. The spelling of my last name is Kellerman.
And what are your duties at the Leon County Sheriff's Office in the crime scene unit?
We document and preserve evidence in crime scenes.
How long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
Been with the Sheriff's Office over 22 years.
As part of your duties, did you respond to Tallahassee Memorial Hospital back on February 22nd, 2014?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did you take some photographs of a deceased patient there?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to approach and show you what's been introduced into evidence as states 26 and 27. And then I'm also going to ask you to look through states exhibits 28 through 37. Just let me know when you're done. And are all these photographs fair and accurate images of what you observed when you went to the hospital that day and photographed this patient?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence states 28 through 37.
Judge, may we approach the sidebar?
Okay. Let me have to pick up, please. 28 to 37 are admitted.
May I publish?
You may.
Deputy Kellerman, what was the purpose of these photographs? What were you attempting to document?
We're documenting the condition of the body when I arrived. We also documented any injuries that we located on the body as we did an inspection of the body.
And what injuries did you observe when you were photographing the body at the hospital?
There were several small injuries on the body that were documented. I noticed blood
Hold on a
stains.
second. The one you just put up there is not one of the ones I had.
This
What
one
number
was
is this?
previously introduced as Exhibit 26.
Oh, it's previously admitted. Okay. Right.
In this photograph was the condition of the body when I arrived. She had a towel wrapped around her head, a blanket covering the body.
All right, and the small injuries that you documented and photographed, is this one of those?
Yes, ma'am. It was
What part of her is this?
that is the left hand near the base of the thumb.
Okay, and this is the scratch or injury that you're attempting to document?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a pointer here if it would assist in it.
I'm sorry, this is State's Exhibit 34. And on State's Exhibit 30, could you tell the jury what injuries you were documenting in this exhibit?
Those were bruising on her arm.
Right, and use the pointer to show them what you're talking about.
There was bruising on her arm, on the forearm, and across the arm in several places.
And this is State's Exhibit 35. What injury were you attempting to show here?
There was bruising and a small abrasion right there.
Tell what part of her that is? It's hard to tell from that.
That's on the back of the hand.
Back of the hand?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about State's Exhibit 33?
We noticed some small blood stains on the fingertips on her right hand. That was the middle and ring fingers of her right hand.
And did you do anything to attempt to preserve the blood stains on those fingers? And I'm showing State's 32.
Yes, ma'am. After documenting them, I placed them into what we have is a handbag. It is made out of Tyvek, but it preserves any evidence that are on the hands at that time.
And did you also photograph the hands and feet?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
I'm showing State's 31. And State's 37. No further questions.
Cross.
No cross.
All right. Any juror have a question of this witness? All right. You can step down. We need to keep him further.
No, sir. Yes, he is to remain under the rule.
You remain subject to recall, sir. You can go about your business. I assume you know how to contact him.
Yes, sir.
All right. Call your next witness.
Carol Bass.
face the clerk right here and be sworn, please, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Have a seat and slide up to the microphone, please, ma'am. Get a little closer to the microphone if you would, please. It'll move. If you have to pull it to you, pull it to you.
Ma'am, what is your name?
Carol Bass,
And is that spelled B-A-S-S?
correct.
All right, Ms. Bass, where did you live back in February of 2014?
8368 Inverness Drive in Tallahassee,
All right.
Golden Eagle.
Okay, and were you neighbors to the Frasch family?
Yes,
Did you know the Frasches?
yes.
And if you're looking at the Frasch home, where was your home in relation to theirs?
Oh, from the street, they would be on the right side.
Okay, so if we're looking at their house, you're to their left?
And when we're in our house, it's to the left. If we're on the, facing from the street, it would be on the right side.
Okay. I may be not asking a very good question. If I'm on the street and I'm looking at their house,
Mm-hmm.
is your house going to be on the
On the
right
left
or
side,
left?
mhm.
On the left, okay. And so if I'm on the street looking at your house, their house is going to be on the right.
Okay.
You're
This is the street right here, and we're here facing, you know, our house is here, and they are on the right side, I guess.
Try something else.
Okay.
I'm showing you what's been introduced into evidence
Mhm.
as State's Exhibit 5.
Okay.
So
When
from
we're
the-
facing their, when we're facing
Let her
their
ask a
house.
question,
Okay.
Ms. Bass.
So from this viewpoint, would your house be on this side or this side?
It's on the left side.
Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're directly next door to them?
Yes.
So your property comes right up to theirs
Right.
in the backyard as well?
Correct.
And were you on the golf course?
No.
Not on the golf course, okay. I want to ask you, I know you've been previously asked about the morning of February 22nd, 2014. Do you recall seeing someone over at the Frasch home that morning?
Yes.
All right, could you please explain for the jury what you saw?
Well, we had gotten up probably around 7 o'clock, and I was getting breakfast, and I heard a car alarm go off, and so I walked over to the dining room and looked out over towards Frasch's, because that's where the sound was coming from. And I saw a person over there loading up the back of a car, and the alarm only went off about 2 or 3 times, so I says, oh, I guess it's okay, you know. If I would have kept on going, I would have been more suspicious of it, but it turned off after about 2, so I just went back.
And what time of morning was this?
It was, I would say around 7:15, 7:30, around that, in that area.
All right, and when you heard the car alarm, was the car alarm coming from the Frasch's residence?
Yes, that's why I was looking over there.
And you observed what type of car over there?
It was a dark SUV of some sort of, you know, like I said, you just glance over there and look, because they were having problems over in there, so.
Were you familiar with what Mrs. Frasch drove? What type of vehicle?
You know, they had so many cars over there. I think she had some type of a white Hummer or something or other. I don't know what it was. I don't remember. It's been 3 years.
Right, sure. So the white Hummer, that wasn't the car that you saw this person around
No,
that morning?
no.
Okay. This was a dark or black SUV?
Yes.
All right, and the person that you saw, can you describe what they were doing?
I said they were loading something up in the back of the SUV. So.
All right, and when you say the back, is that the back seat or the back hatch?
No, it was the back, you know, lift there, the
Okay.
very rear of the car.
All right, and were you able to see what the person was loading into the SUV?
No, I wasn't. No.
Were you able to tell anything about the person? as far as?
You know, it was a tall person that had a red shirt and a dark curly hair. Like I say, I glanced over there and I looked at it and everything seemed okay, no problem, so I just went back to getting breakfast.
Okay, so it's a tall person with dark curly hair. Are you able to tell whether they were African American or Caucasian?
They weren't African American, no.
Okay, so it was a white person. Was it a male or a female?
I cannot honestly say I assumed it was a male, but I wouldn't testify that it was.
Okay, so you just saw the back of the person.
No, I saw the kind of the side, when you're loading in, a side of the view of them.
Okay, and you assumed it was a male.
Yes, I did, but
And you're familiar with Mr. Frasch's appearance?
if I'm close to him, yes.
Okay.
Not from a distance like that.
Okay, so you weren't close enough to say whether or not that
No.
was Mr. Frasch. Was there anything about the...
I could see you nod your head, but would you give an answer to the court reporter, please?
No, I said no.
All right, and was there anything inconsistent about the person being Mr. Frasch? I mean, can you tell this jury, well, it wasn't Mr. Frasch because...
No,
X?
I couldn't. Like I say, you just glance out there and you see them loading, and the alarm went off, and so I went back to what I was doing. So,
Okay, and the person you saw was wearing a red shirt?
yeah, definitely a bright red T-shirt looking thing or polo one.
And did you see that person or that vehicle anymore that day?
No,
Did you continue watching to see
No.
when they left or anything like that? Okay. And that was the same day that later the body was discovered at the house?
oh yes, yes, that was.
And you said that was around 7:30 a.m. that you observed that?
Yeah, around that area. Mhm.
Okay. After you observed what you've just explained for the jury around 7:30, did you notice anything else unusual at the house, like before the police got there? Did you notice any other activity over there?
No, because that would be the front of the house, and I went back to the rear of the house, and I didn't see anything. There's a lot of hedges between us, so
But nothing else got your attention? No commotion or anything like that?
no.
Okay. You mentioned there were a lot of cars over there. Were there a lot of cars over there on that particular day, or do you just mean in general?
Well, they had just hauled off a bunch of cars about maybe the day before or around that area. And I don't think there was too many cars, although, that car was kind of back closer to the street, or I probably couldn't have seen anything. I don't remember how many cars were left there. She used to park her car in front of the house in the lawn, so I guess they had moved some of those cars out, so she was parking closer to the garage. So I don't remember at that time how many cars were left in the driveway.
The victim used to park the white Hummer close in the front yard, is that what you said?
She was parking in the grass right by the front door for a while, because
And how long had she been parking over closer to the side door?
you mean by the garage there?
Yes, ma'am.
Not too long, because they had just they had taken all the other cars away, and tow cars.
Do you know exactly what day they towed the cars?
Not now. Like I said, it wasn't too long before that they had taken the cars away, but
No further questions.
Cross.
Ms. Bass, as I understand it, there had been a lot of cars in the driveway for a
Yes.
period of time, is that right? And when all those cars were in the driveway, that's when you were seeing the white Hummer sometimes park in the grass
Right.
up by the front door because it couldn't get down
right.
to the rest of the driveway, is that right?
Right, well, there was other reasons that I was told, but that's hearsay.
Okay. Then afterwards, when the cars got moved, there was space down there in the driveway
Yes.
where you saw the black car and the Hummer.
Right.
Okay. When you're in the back of your house, you can't see the front or even part of the side of the Frasch home, can you?
No.
So if you're back there during the morning hours of the 22nd, you don't know whether 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people had come and gone into the Frasch home.
No.
Okay.
Only
And
if they came, only if they come up around the lake area, you know,
Right.
because we're always watching that lake area.
That's the back. That's
Yeah.
toward the back.
mhm. But not directly in where the house residence is.
There's access to the homes through the back pond area, is there
Right.
not, the lake?
Right.
So somebody could come around the back, and if they weren't making a lot of noise, or you didn't happen to be out there, you wouldn't know that either, would you?
Well, we eat breakfast and everything at that table that faces the lake, and we're always watching it because of the wildlife and stuff over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't hear anything unusual that morning?
No.
Okay, thank you, that's all I've got.
To redirect.
No, sir.
Any juror have a question of this witness? All right, if not, you can step down. Do we need to keep her any further?
No, sir.
You need her for any reason, Mr. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
You're excused. Thank you for being here. Call your next witness.
Farrell Bass.
You face the clerk here and be sworn, please, sir. Raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Have a seat. Slide up to that microphone, please, sir.
Mr. Bass, if you'll slide all the way up to that microphone and speak into it, please, and tell us your name.
Farrell Bass,
Will you spell that, please?
Farrellbass.
Mr. Bass, where did you live back in February of 2014?
I was in the backyard of my house,
What's the address there at your house?
8368 Inverness Drive.
All right, and were you next door neighbors to the Frasch residents?
Is-
Were
Pardon?
the Frasches your neighbors?
Yes,
All right, and that day, I think you said you were out doing some gardening.
you're right.
What type of work were you doing?
I was digging a hole to plant a plant.
All right, and that was in your backyard?
Correct.
And does your backyard abut the property of the Frasches?
Yes,
From where you were digging, depending on how your body was turned, would you be able to see the Frasches screened-in pool area?
I could see the one side and the entrance, yes.
I'm going to show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 38. Do you recognize State's 38?
Yes,
And would that be a fair and accurate view of what you would see from your yard looking over at the Frosch's yard?
yes.
And at this time, I'd ask to introduce State's 38.
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted.
Sir, and this is a, I'm going to put this up there. There's a pointer. If you want to indicate something, just push that button. May I publish?
You may.
All right, sir, if you'll just kind of indicate with the pointer to the best of your ability where you were located that day when you were doing the yard work.
Here.
All right.
And you're going to need to
Pardon?
keep that microphone in front of you if you can, because we're not able to hear you without that.
Okay.
All right, so you were about right there where you indicated, and at some point, well, let me ask you, at some point, did you observe something going on over at the Frasch home?
I saw a man go around the corner of the house toward the pool area, and as he got to the gate, the screen entrance to the pool, he said, "Oh shit, oh my God," turned around and went back around the house, toward the front of the house.
All right, and the man that you saw, can you describe him at all?
Probably not well, he was a black man that I had seen over there several times doing maintenance work.
All right, and at the time that the man arrived, or at the time that you first observed this man over there at the Frasch house, about how long had you been out in the yard doing yard work?
Probably 15 minutes.
Okay. Did you previously say 30 minutes?
Could have been 30,
Okay.
15 to 30, yes ma'am.
Do you recall doing a deposition in this case, having your deposition taken?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you recall having your deposition taken in this case?
Yes,
Okay. And would your memory have been better at the time of the deposition regarding specifically how long you'd been out there?
yes,
All right. What about interviews with law enforcement? Were you interviewed by law enforcement in reference to this case?
what?
Were you interviewed by law enforcement officers in
Yes.
reference to the same
Yes,
stuff? Okay. And that would have been right about shortly after the time that it occurred,
correct,
right?
correct.
All right. And would your memory have been better then than it is now about how long you've been out there?
Yes,
Okay. Did you see, let's see. Okay, so during the time that you were working out in the yard before you saw the maintenance man, had you heard anyone around or near the Frasch pool area?
no,
Had you seen anyone else over there on that property?
no,
Did you hear the dog barking?
no,
Did you hear anybody calling the dog?
no,
Did you hear any type of commotion around the pool or in the house or anywhere over there?
no,
Did you hear any type of argument going on over there?
no ma'am,
Did you hear a big splash or get the impression that somebody was going in the pool?
no,
Did you see the owner, Mr. Frasch, over there at all during that time?
no.
Okay. No further questions.
Frasch?
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Bass.
Good morning.
You were pretty far down in your yard when you saw this black male go in up to the screened-in porch area, correct?
Correct.
Did he actually open the door and go into the pool area?
I don't think so. But I couldn't say for sure.
Okay.
But he was to the door.
But you didn't see him go into the pool area?
No,
Had he gone into the pool area, he would have been out of your line of sight, correct?
yes,
Okay. Incidentally, you were asked a number of questions if you heard anything. How good is your hearing? And I hate to ask you that, but I've got a couple years on some of these folks too, so
that's okay.
mine's gone south.
It isn't real good.
It's not good, okay. Were you wearing any kind of hearing aids or anything that day out in the yard?
No,
Okay. Could you see from the location you were in the yard digging the hole, any of the cars that were over in the driveway?
no,
Okay. Thank you, that's all I got.
Redirect.
You were able to hear the man that was over in the pool area or near that area say, "Oh shit," and "Oh my God."
that's right. Absolutely heard that.
No further questions.
All right, any juror have a question of this witness? All right, you can step down. Let me have my pointer back, if you would, please, sir. The pointer, if you'd hand it to. The pointer. Thank you. Thank you. Do we need to keep this witness any further?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
You're excused. Thank you for being here.
May we approach?
Go sidebar. Want the court reporter?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let the jury step out, please. Get your witness, please.
Mr. Reed's working on that, Judge.
If you face the clerk and be sworn, please, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Have a seat. Slide at the microphone, please, sir. Let the record reflect this is Proffer. The jury is outside the courtroom. State your name for the record, sir.
Stephen Wilson?
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, did you work for the Frasch family back in 2014?
Yes.
And was there a time when you were with Mrs. Frasch and overheard an argument between her and her husband?
Yes.
And what, was that an argument that was occurring over the telephone?
Yes.
All right, and about how, you're familiar with when she was killed, correct?
Yes.
About how long before she was killed did you have the opportunity to overhear this argument?
I would say about a week and a half.
All right, and do you remember what the argument was about?
Not really. It was an exchange back and forth about not seeing one another. She hasn't seen him in a while or something like that.
All right, and did Mrs. Frasch put Mr. Frasch on speakerphone during the course of that argument?
She did.
So you were able to hear both of their voices?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you know that was Mr. Frasch on the other end of the line?
She said, "You're my husband."
The victim referred to him as her husband? All right, and
I'm sorry,
is that a yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, and during the course of that argument, did you hear the man on the other end of the line that she referred to as her husband make any threats toward Mrs. Frasch?
Yes.
And what did he say?
Basically said, "I will kill you."
Sorry, what?
Could you repeat what the threat was?
"I will kill you."
Is that the extent of the proffered testimony?
That's the issue that I anticipate an objection about.
Okay. You want to cross on the proffer?
Yes, sir. Mr. Wilson, you think this conversation you claim to have heard was 10 or 12, or how many days before the death?
I would say about 12 days, 10 days.
Okay.
So about a week and a half.
So there was if the death was February 22nd, this would have been before Valentine's Day, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it would have been closer in time to an incident on February 7th that you were aware of.
What was the incident on February 7th?
February 7th. Do you recall that?
I think we need a little more clue, Mr.
Okay,
Taylor, what you're
let me
talking
ask you
about.
this. It was before Valentine's Day weekend, correct?
Yes.
How long had you been working for Ms. Frasch at that time?
About 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. And how many times during the course of your employment with Ms. Frasch had you seen the person she described as the husband?
I've never seen him.
How many conversations or times had you heard a voice, in person or anywhere else for that matter, that was attributed to the husband?
I've never talked to him or seen him.
And so basically what your recollection is, Mrs. Frasch, who you're working for, says, this is my husband.
Yes.
Never heard the voice before and haven't heard it after. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I got, Judge.
Redirect.
I understood your testimony to be that she referred to the person as her husband during the call.
Right. She said, you're my husband.
All right, and based on the context of the call, you don't remember exactly what the argument was about, but
No.
was the argument that you overheard consistent with that being her husband?
Yes.
No further questions?
What's your objection, Mr. Taylor?
Judge, I don't think there's any basis for this to come in. It's a hearsay statement that he's basically saying he heard from the deceased. We haven't got any way to cross-examine that. And there's no foundation or basis that it's relevant to anything in this case because it's at least 10, 12, or 14 days prior to the death. It's remote.
Ms. Captain?
I think it goes to motive, Judge. The defense is arguing that somebody else did this crime. And
Well, I mean, it's clearly relevant. I don't think that's the argument. The argument is your foundation for that this was a statement made by the defendant.
Well, I think their cross goes to weight, not admissibility. If during the course of this heated argument, the victim is calling the person on the other end of the line her husband, he's not saying, what are you talking about, I'm not your husband. The context of the conversation lends itself to support the belief that that was her husband on the other end of the line. We know we've established, both sides have already established this as a tumultuous relationship that was ongoing, so I think it's admissible that, you know, this occurred. If they want to argue that it was somebody else on the other end of the line or that that hasn't been proven, I think that would go to the weight of the evidence.
Further, Mr. Taylor? All right, I'm going to overrule the objection. I don't find the statements being offered for the truth of the matter asserted in terms of what the alleged victim said. It's being offered as an admission against the defendant, which is either not hearsay or an exception to the hearsay, depending on how you construe that. But the comments by Ms. Frasch, it's not that she's saying to Mr. Wilson, this is my husband, which would be hearsay statement. He's recounting a conversation between the two, which creates the appearance that it is the defendant that is being, that the conversation is occurring with. Obviously, the defense can argue he doesn't really know what he sounds like, so that goes to the weight of the evidence, but it does not make it inadmissible. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Judge, if I understood then the ruling, it's based upon the witness understanding some conversation and references by the deceased, who we can't cross-examine, saying that that's the husband.
Right, and that puts in context what the allegation is that your client says, so her comments are not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, they're being offered to identify who the conversation is with, so therefore they're not hearsay. All right, let's have a jury, please. Maybe we should take a break, I'm sorry. We'll take 10 minutes. Give me a break. Ready for jury?
Yes, sir.
Have a jury, please. Jury in the courtroom. Everybody be seated, please. You call your next witness, Ms. Kaplan.
State calls Stephen Jamal Wilson.
All right, Mr. Wilson, you remain under oath. Mr. Wilson was sworn outside the presence. You may proceed, Ms. Kaplan.
What is your name, sir?
Stephen Wilson.
All right, and Stephen spelled S-T-E-V-E-N?
Yes.
Okay, and how old are you, sir?
24.
Mr. Wilson, did you work for the Frasch family back in February of 2014?
Yes.
What did you do for them?
Basically just helped out around the house, helped with the kids. That's basically it, very easy.
All right, were you helping Mrs. Frasch with something to do with a website or something like that?
Oh yeah, for the kids, she modeled. So I was just helping her set that up.
Okay. And that was some kind of website associated with the children?
Yes, one of the children, yeah. Hyra, I think is her name.
Okay. And how long had you been working for the Frasch family when Mrs. Frasch was killed?
About 3 weeks.
How did you get that job?
It was a referral through my mother, actually,
All right, and who is your mother?
Bridget Williams.
And did Bridget Williams also work for
No.
Mrs. Frasch? What kind of work does she do?
She did nails.
Was she Mrs. Frasch's nail technician?
Yes, well, yeah.
And when you worked for the Frasch family, did you deal primarily with Mrs. Frasch or Mr. Frasch?
Mrs.
Okay. Did you ever deal with Mr. Frasch?
No.
How often were you around Mrs. Frasch during the 3 weeks that you were employed with them?
I would say about 3 times a week.
Okay. And when you were there, how many hours would you work on a particular day?
5 hours.
And during those hours that you were with Mrs. Frasch, would you go to the Inverness house or would you report somewhere else?
The Inverness house?
The Golden Eagle.
Oh, okay.
residence.
It would be times that she would come pick me up, actually. And then we would go over there for a little bit and we would just really be on the road.
Okay. Were you kind of like a personal assistant to her?
Basically, yes.
Were the kids, her young daughters, with her when you saw her?
At times, yes.
Okay. And other times they were not?
Very few. I think it was twice I didn't see them.
Okay. And did you know where they were
No.
when you didn't see them? Did you ever see Mr. Frasch take the kids anywhere or hear of them being with him?
No.
Did you observe any evidence in the time that you spent with Mrs. Frasch that she and her husband, Mr. Frasch, were reconciling?
Not that I can recall, no.
Did you have an opportunity to overhear an argument between Mr. and Mrs. Frasch?
Yes, on the phone.
When was that argument?
A specific date,
How close in time to the time of her death?
about a week and a half.
About a week and a half prior to her death?
Yes.
Do you remember where you were when you overheard that argument?
I was actually in the car.
And you were in the car with Mrs. Frasch?
Yes.
Were the children in the car, if you recall?
I want to say yes. I think they were.
All right, and do you recall what the argument was about?
I don't.
Okay, was it, can you characterize the argument? Like, was it just a disagreement, or was it kind of
I
a
think it
loud
was more of a
verbal?
disagreement.
All right, and were you able to hear what Mr. Frosch was saying, or only Mrs. Frosch's side?
Mrs. Frost's side.
All right, at some point, did she put Mr. Frosch on speakerphone?
She did.
And during the time that Mr. Frosch was on speakerphone, did he make any threats to harm Mrs. Frosch?
He did.
And what did he say?
He said, "I will kill you.
He said what?
I will kill you."
And how did you know that that was Mr. Frosch on the other end of the line?
She said, "You're my husband."
During the argument, she said, "You're my husband," to the person on the line?
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross.
Wilson, when did you start working for Mrs. Frasch?
It was about probably the 20th or the 21st of January.
So we're talking of 2014.
Yes.
So when you claim to have heard this conversation, you'd been working with her for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
About that, yes.
Okay. And during that time, you had seen her with the children, and there were a couple of occasions within that 2 or 3 week period where she wasn't with the kids, true?
Yes.
Okay. How many times did you have conversations during this 2 or 3 weeks you worked for Mrs. Frasch with Dr. Frasch?
Say that again?
How many times did you have conversations with Dr. Frasch?
None.
How many times did you see him or meet him at the house?
No.
Okay. So you had never talked to him before this supposed conversation you heard?
No, sir.
And you had never heard his voice before this supposed conversation?
No, sir.
Okay. And the basis for your assuming the speaker on this phone that you say you heard was Dr. Frosch was because Samara Frosch said something to you, to him?
Yes.
She said, "You're my husband"?
Yes.
Taylor, will you stay with the microphone, please? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm having a little hard time hearing.
Okay. "You're my husband"?
Yes.
Okay. Who was paying you to work for her?
She was.
Okay. And you were sort of like her assistant?
Yes.
Okay. These days that you were at the house, would you have the run of the house? That basically, if you're looking out for the kids, you go in each and every room and what have you?
No, I didn't go to each and every room.
Okay. Was the house at times a mess?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. Was there a pet or pets in the house?
No.
No? Okay. So there weren't any parrots or cats or dogs or anything like that?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. How about cars in the yard or in the driveway? Were there a number of cars in the driveway?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And what are we talking about? What's numbers? Are we talking about 2 or 10 or what?
I would say at the time about 4.
4? Okay. So while you were working there, there weren't ever 10 or 12 or 13, 14 cars in the driveway?
I didn't see that, no.
Okay. And as I understand it, you would be there for maybe 3, 4, 5 hours a day, a couple days a week?
At home?
At the house?
Not that long, no.
Not that long?
Not that long.
Oh, not that long, I'm sorry. How long would you have been there when you would, on a typical workday?
Hour and a half, 2 hours.
Hour and a half to 2 hours? When she would come to pick you up, was there a particular vehicle that Mrs. Frasch would drive?
A Hummer.
A Hummer? Was that a white Hummer with black trim?
Yes.
Black interior, black side,
Yes.
black back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. May I have a moment, Judge?
You mind?
And then, one final question. Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Redirect.
You said that Mrs. Frosch referred to the man that threatened to kill her as her husband. I know you can't remember specifically what they were arguing about, but are you able to tell the jury, based on the context of the conversation that you heard, whether you believed it was her husband?
I just heard
Objection
this.
to what he believes, Judge, is irrelevant.
Sustained.
All right, I'll rephrase it. Was there anything about the context of the conversation that indicated to you it was someone other than her husband?
No.
Nothing further.
Did juror have a question of this witness? All right, you may step down. It's my understanding we want to keep him subject to recall.
Yes, sir.
All right, you'll be subject to recall. Call your next witness.
It's going to call Molly Connie to the stand.